Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. So, let me take this opportunity to introduce Professor Dr. Srikumar Rao. Dr. Srikumar Rao, I will share my personal transformation journey with him in a moment, but let me introduce him to all of us. Some of you know him already very well. Dr. Rao has been ex Columbia professor, Columbia Business School professor, and he is the creator of this world famous course, Creativity and Personal Mastery. He was teaching at Columbia Business School, and then he decided to take a sabbatical. And when he went on his own journey, he found that the learnings from all the spiritual masters across the faiths talk about life changing messages. But how do you convey that to the generations that he was dealing with? Hard nosed type A personalities, top business school graduates. And from there, he said that, let me become, he calls himself FedEx guy. When you talk to him, there are a lot of moments of laughter that will come your way. So he said that I'm a FedEx guy. So what he did, that he took the messages of the spiritual masters and converted them into the exercises and created this course, which is taught at top business schools like Columbia, UC Berkeley, London Business School, Kellogg's, Northwestern, the top rated course there. I had an encounter, and he's a coach as well. Let me introduce him as a coach. That is Creativity and Personal Mastery course, but he's one of the top notch executive coaches in the world. And his niche is about coaching the topmost successful people who also have a spiritual orientation to make a difference in the world through monitoring gains. So that's a very, very different niche that he's working on. One of the top executive coaches, very dear friend of Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. And he is going to talk to us about how spirituality fits into coaching. And it's a pleasure listening to him, who is the author of 3 books, Are You Ready to Succeed? Happiness at Work, and the latest offering is Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots. So my life changed twice. First, I met Coacharya founder Ram Ramanathan and Cindy, who is our Director of Education. And then I met Dr. Srikumar Rao. Life further changed, got transformed completely when I got accepted into his course. So we first invited him at Coaches for You during COVID times, and his session was mesmerizing, transformational. And our friend Pradeep Natarajan, whom we lost about a couple of weeks ago, he was the instrument, and Vijay Lakshmi was instrumental in introducing Dr. Srikumar Rao to all of us. And it's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Rao on this conversation today. I would be his conversation partner, but always privileged and honored to be working with him. Our Cindy, our Director of Education, was supposed to be the dialogue partner, but unfortunately she had some health issues, so we wish her well to recover soon. And I would request Dr. Rao to come on the screen, and we welcome you, sir, to this session.
Thank you,
Namaste,
Ujjwal.
sir.
My pleasure to be with you and speaking to the Coacharya community.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. We have coaches joining from across the globe, as this is the part of International Coaching Week that we are celebrating. And we also wish to mention that your session garnered highest registration, close to 350. So that speaks about you, speaks about Coacharya, and also speaks about the topic, that how spirituality fits into coaching. So, with your permission, Dr. Rao, can I ask you the first question? My question to you is that how would you like to define spirituality in the context of professional coaching, leadership coaching, etc.?
Okay. Before I do that, Ujjwal, I have to share with you how I view coaching.
Mhm,
And the way I view coaching is not that you simply find out what your coachee would like and then
mhm.
facilitate how he or she can get there.
Yeah.
My view of coaching is that you help the person who is being coached rise to a higher level of consciousness and help that person recognize that the sole aim of life is to reach the oneness that is spoken about in all the wisdom tradition.
Mhm.
This is Jnana, Sakshatkari, Nirvana, the kingdom of heaven, whatever. It's called many things in many different traditions, but that is the purpose of life. And all of us, in our own way, are looking for that. We're looking for happiness that does not end. And we're seeking it in the wrong places. We're seeking it in achievement, whether it's material achievement, whether it's hierarchical achievement, power, fame, etc., etc., etc. Now, these are very powerful impulses, and we are driven to achieve that. And certainly, the driven people who come to coaching with me have that. So I help them find out this is the way to get there. But in the process of doing that, I also view my role as I would like them to evolve to a higher level of consciousness where they see that none of this is actually going to help them get to where they really want to go, but they may not necessarily know that. So, in that context, I think that coaching is a very spiritual occupation.
Mm, yes. Also, Dr. Rao, from that, if I can ask you that many times you say that clients do not know what they want. So, is this something that you would like to expand? Because as a professional coaches, we also sometimes feel that client bring up something else, but they perhaps are not sure what they want out of coaching relationship.
Correct. So, let me take the case of entrepreneurs, Ujjwal, because many of my clients are entrepreneurs and they're quite successful entrepreneurs. So, if I were to ask them, would you like to run $100 million company? They all raise their hands. And, forget 100 million. How about $1 billion company? Yes. But then I ask them to reflect on this. You don't really want to run $1 billion company. You want the feeling that you will have when you're running $1 billion company. And even that is not accurate. You don't want the feeling you will have when you're running $1 billion company. You want the feeling you think you will have when you're running $1 billion company. Now, this is an eye opener to practically everybody. They never think about it. They said, of course, I want to run $1 billion company. But when they reflect on it, they say, yeah, that's true, actually. What I want is the feeling that I think I will have when I run $1 billion company. And the only way that I can think of now to have that feeling is to actually run $1 billion company. So I go out and I struggle and I strive and I, implement sound management policies and I learn how can I do that. And then when they are fully comfortable with the idea, we talk about how their inward journey can help them in their outward journey. This is the real breakthrough when my clients recognize that you can achieve much better, much greater results outside by working on what is inside between your ears.
Mm.
That makes it a journey which is full of joy. It might have setbacks, but those setbacks themselves are the source of joy. It sounds paradoxical, I know, but that's the way it works.
Yes. Thank you for that, Dr. Rao. And at this juncture, if I can also bring you advocate and also teach all of us about extreme resilience. So how spirituality can help someone deal with extreme resilience, and for the benefit of all our fellow coaches here, if it is possible for you to also define extreme resilience and then its impact.
Resilience has become a new buzzword today, Ujjwal. And I've seen senior executive wanted ads in which they talk about, must be resilient. Resilience, of course, is our ability to bounce back from adversity.
Mm,
And these days, I don't have to tell you that businesses are facing more turbulent conditions than ever before as a result of technology, as a result of globalization, as a result of the fact that your competition is no longer around the corner, it may be, 12 time zones away. So obviously, it's good to recover from a setback. Extreme resilience is where you recover from a setback so quickly that an external observer might not even know that you have suffered an adverse event. That's what I classify as extreme resilience. And it is possible to achieve that. It is possible to achieve that by a very simple tactic. Don't define anything that happens to you as an adversity. In Creativity and Personal Mastery, my course, you have an exercise called Good Thing, Bad Thing, Who Knows? And I'm sure you're familiar with that. But let me summarize very quickly for your audience. Can you recollect anything that happened in your life that at the time it happened, you thought this is terrible? But now you can look back upon it and say, hey, that wasn't so terrible after all, or maybe even that was a good thing. I'm sure you can. Many people can. I was speaking before the Global Executive Summit of the Entrepreneurs Organization when someone insisted on being recognized. So I recognized him and he said, Professor Rao, I've got the perfect story for you. He was a graduate from one of the IITs. I think it was one of the better known IITs. And he came to America. He did his master's at Stanford, got a job with a high tech company. His friends got jobs with other high tech companies, and he was looking forward to building his career and carrying his friendship. But he had an immigration problem as a result of which he had to leave the country. He got a lawyer and fought it and lost, and he had to leave. Among other things, he had student debt. And when you have student debt in dollars and you're earning in rupees, you're not in a very good situation. And they said, Professor Rao, as a result of my being forced to leave the country, I met this wonderful lady who's now my wife. I teamed up with some of my engineering school buddies and we started a company. It's going gangbusters. All my clients are in America. I come to America at least 6 times a year. And I'm really leading a picture perfect life. And none of this would have happened if I had not been forced to leave the country. So, in your own life, I'm sure you can recollect instances where something happened, and at the time it happened, you were absolutely convinced this is a terrible thing. But with the perspective of time and perhaps greater maturity and wisdom, you can look upon it and say, that wasn't bad at all. That was perhaps even a good thing. So, if something like that happened in the past, why are you in a hurry to label anything bad today? Because, Ujjwal, one of the things I would like all of you listeners to understand is that no event ever causes suffering. Let me repeat that. No event causes suffering. Suffering begins the moment you label that event, this is bad, this is terrible, I cannot stand it. Let's say you got fired. Well, you now have a lot of free time. But you say, oh my God, I got fired. what am I going to do? I've got mortgage payments, I've got my kids' tuition to pay. This is terrible. And the moment you stick the label, this is terrible on it, at that instant, suffering begins. Suffering doesn't begin when an event happens, suffering begins the instant you label the event, this is bad, this is terrible. So, what happens if you do not label any event, this is terrible, this is bad? Then suffering never begins. That's how you become extremely resilient. So, when an event happens in your life and your immediate tendency is to classify it as this is a disaster, this is a catastrophe, pause and just ask yourself, is there any conceivable method by which in X years this could actually turn out to be good? And if the answer to that is yes, why are you in a hurry to label it good? Just asking yourself that question moves you from the emotional domain of despair to the emotional domain of possibility. And if you then ask yourself the next question, is there something that I can proactively do to convert this to a good thing? And you move seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility. That is how you become extremely resilient. You never have to bounce back from adversity because don't define anything as adversity. You simply define it as this happened. And then you ask, where do I go from here?
Wow. That's an amazing lesson for all of us. And on that note, as some of the coaches here, if we can check with you, Dr. Rao, that how your own personal spiritual journey has helped you in your coaching practice, which is probably Fortune 10 companies that you're coaching with. Uh, if we can get to know.
Uh, Actually, I did not set out to be a coach, Ujjwal. You know my course, Creativity and Personal Mastery, and it has literally transformed thousands of lives. In fact, just yesterday, I had joined a new organization and I received an email from someone who was in that organization saying, "Dear Dr. Rao, I just want you to know that your teachings have profoundly changed the life of my wife. Thank you so much." So, and once again, as you mentioned earlier, what I have done is I have taken the teachings of the world's greatest masters, I have stripped them of religious, cultural, and other connotations and adapted them so that they're acceptable to intelligent people in the post industrial world. And
Mm.
in the milieux in which I work, top business schools, major corporations, entrepreneurial organizations, it's been proven over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So if it changes life, it's not I who changed it, it's the great masters who articulated the wisdom, the concepts. I'm just the FedEx guy. I make the translation, I deliver the package. They didn't come from me. That's why I can confidently state that this will transform your life. So, what happened is that after I taught it at many top business schools, I spun it out and started teaching it privately. And people came up to me, and some of them said, "We want to work with you." So, I tried to tell them about the course, and they said, "No, no, you don't understand. I don't want to take the course. I want to work with you." So that's how I became a coach. I became a coach by default. And I really don't think of myself as a coach in that sense. Though, I use the term executive coach because that's understood and saves me a lot of explanation. I view myself as someone who is on a journey, and I'm happy to share what I learned on the journey. And if you find it useful, please, you know, take whatever is worthwhile to you. And
Mm.
many people find that it is extremely worthwhile to them. So that's how I became a coach. I became a coach by accident, by default.
Yes. Yes. So on that note, Dr. Rao, since and completely agree with what you're saying. So, are there any tools or techniques that you would like to suggest to us as coaches, which can help us to lead a more spiritually enriched life, and also perhaps can be suggested to our clients also, not in that ICF limited frame of coaching, but in general, how can we perhaps help our client as well in some way?
The most important thing, Ujjwal, is for you and any coach to get rid of the notion that you are a coach. That basically does nothing but strengthen your ego. Here I am, I'm going to help this poor, deluded soul become a better person. No, you're a poor, deluded soul yourself. What help can you give anyone when you're so thoroughly confused and muddled up yourself? Instead, simply have the notion, there is this principle working through me. If you're a person of faith, and I have persons of faith from every wisdom tradition, think, Jesus is doing it, or Krishna is doing it, or Allah is doing it, or Baha'u'llah is doing it, or, whoever. This force which inspires me is acting through me, and I'm privileged to be the instrument by which this force is manifesting itself. And that same principle has also brought your client to you. So you are, if you will, Krishna talking to Krishna. So enjoy yourself, enjoy the journey, share what learning you have with the understanding that you are in your current state of consciousness yourself and muddled up soul on your own journey. So if you do introduce any complication which could set your client back, you did it inadvertently, and in your heart you acknowledge that in advance. So your
Mhm.
job is simply to share. Don't have the notion that you are a coach. You're simply sharing, and the client will decide what makes sense to them in their situation and utilize it appropriately, and be grateful that you have been given the opportunity to do that. I would say that my number one advice to all people who are coaches is to get rid of the notion that you are a coach.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I think not only cognitive understanding, but the real visceral understanding that needs to happen. And many times, Dr. Rao, you also refer a lot about the importance of surrendering, and because many people would like to control the outcome, and then they feel that they are doing everything, like I mentioned, we as coaches, but you beautifully suggested that we need to drop that notion first. So so what is the importance of concept of surrendering as human beings
The
for all of
concept of
us?
surrendering as human beings, Ujjwal, is to recognize that nothing is really under your control. All your life, you've been struggling to exert control over some part of your life. Virtually everything we do is an attempt to control some part of our internal or external environment. Why are you a coach? Why are people on this webinar? They're on this webinar because they think, gee, maybe I'll get some useful tips that I can then use to become a more successful coach, which will then lead to greater fame, greater, more money, etc., etc. It's an attempt to control some part of your internal or external environment. We are all control freaks. The point is, many times we have succeeded, so we think, see, I did it, I have control. In reality, you do not have control. You never had control. You never will have control. And one of the advantages of the pandemic, if I can say so, is that it has brought home at a very visceral level that you do not have control. Because even when you accept intellectually, I don't have control, you're still living in a world where you take things for granted. Like, if I have no food in the house, I'll go out to a restaurant and order off the menu. As a result of the pandemic, even such things were called into question.
Mm.
My wife and I are both tennis fanatics. We go to the US Open practically every year. We've been many times to the French Open, we've been to the Australian Open. And 2020, we decided we'd go to Wimbledon. So I bought good seats for the final rounds of Wimbledon. At that time, if someone had said, Srikumar, you're not going to see Wimbledon, I'd have said, yeah, possible. But in my head would have been something like, perhaps somebody close to me fell ill, so I had to cancel my trip. I would never have imagined that the tournament itself would be cancelled, and further, there'd be no planes flying between New York and London. So the pandemic really brought home at a very visceral level you don't have any control. So when you don't have any control, recognize that you don't have any control, and there is the universe going its own merry way, accomplishing what it needs to do in a perfect manner. Your job is to explicitly recognize that and be an instrument of the universe. I think one of the most important sayings of the Gita is Nimitta Matram Bhavasavya Sachin. Be thou my instrument, O Arjuna. You are not slaying the Kauravas. They have already been slain by me. All you're doing is
Mm.
releasing the arrows. So when you have that, two things happen. One, your ego gets out of the way because what am I proud about? I'm not doing anything. It's all being done. And second, if it's all being done, why are you bothered about the outcome? It's going to happen, and whatever happens, you accept it gratefully. So a lot of tension, a lot of stress leaves your life. And you find the more you surrender, the more things work out beautifully. Can I read something to you, Ujjwal? Let me get the book from my thing. This is very important. When you have become one with the self, a great power takes you over and runs your life for you. It looks after your body. It puts you in the right place at the right time. It makes you say the right things to the people you meet. This power takes you over so completely you no longer have any ability to decide or discriminate. The ego that thinks, I must do this, or I should not do that, is no longer there. The self simply animates you and makes you do all the things that need to be done. So when you surrender perfectly, that is what happens. I remember before I came to the US, I went to meet my guru. My guru was the Shankaracharya of Sringeri, not the current occupant, but his predecessor. And he told me something which at that time made no sense to me whatsoever. He said, Sri Kumar, you don't understand. I am like a leaf that has fallen off the tree. And it's only now that I recognize what a profound statement that was. A leaf has fallen off the tree. It has no will, no volition. Wherever the wind takes it, it goes. That is how your life can be. And when you get to that state, there is nothing but joy in your life. There is pure ananda. Ananda is mistranslated frequently. You talk about it as happiness, but Ananda is much more than happiness. It is a very deep feeling of well being. The knowledge that you are okay. You have always been okay. You always will be okay. In fact, you cannot not be okay. You're in the human predicament. When you're in the human predicament, stuff will happen. There will be serious illness and death. There will be career setbacks. There will be financial reverses. There will be relationship problems. All of that is part of being in the human condition. You will deal with each of these situations as appropriate when they arise, but you will deal with it from the space of, I have always been okay and I am okay now. And that can only be obtained by complete surrender. Ramana Maharshi used to say that there are basically two methods to get rid of suffering. The first is the path of self inquiry, which he was very big on. Every time you're suffering, simply ask yourself, who is this who is suffering? And you direct your mind inward. Most of the time, our minds are directed outwards. You direct it inwards. And when you do that, eventually you will come to the point where the mind disappears and you are revealed as the self. It works, but most of us find it very, very, very difficult. The other way is to truly surrender completely. And when you truly surrender completely, there is nothing that you're doing. It is just happening through you spontaneously. As I just read out to you from Annamalai Swami, that is the state you're in.
Yeah.
So surrender is a very, very, very powerful tool.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. So I feel like asking you that, as Ramana also says, that between us and supreme consciousness, the mind is like a veil or a curtain which comes in the way. And once that curtain is no longer there, it's just river merging with ocean. So uh, mental chatter is something that always comes in the way because of the body mind intellect complex. So what would you suggest to deal with that mental chatter? And once that is taken care of, probably our spiritual awakening is accelerated.
We're getting into the realm of language ritual, and we have to be
Mhm.
very careful because language itself is the problem.
Okay.
Okay. So let me tell you the problem with our situation, the conditioning we've had.
Mhm.
And for those who are listening who are parents, I will share an example. One of the most frightening things you can have is when your child comes up to you and says, "Hey, daddy, or mommy, I am bored." And you go, "Oh my God, you're bored. Nay, nay, beta, why don't you do this? Why don't you watch this movie, play this game, go out, hang out with your friends, go see a movie or something?" And yourself, when you have some time, say, "Oh, what's playing on television? Is there a new serial on Netflix? Can I go out and have a beer with my friends?" You're always fighting boredom, you're always outward directed, and everybody else around you is also outwardly directed. You never ever think, okay, I'm bored, let me sit down and see who is feeling bored. Turning your mind inwards is something that is alien to us and the conditioning we have received, but that is the most fruitful journey you can have. So, whenever someone takes my course, Creativity and Personal Mastery, whenever someone becomes my coaching client, a big part of what I do is get them to understand that they are not their mental chatter, they are the observer of the mental chatter. And the moment you become the observer of your mental chatter, you find that it loses a great deal of its power. Understand, mental chatter is not a problem. Mental chatter is like clouds in the sky. You go out for a walk, you look up, there are clouds in the sky. You walk for 10 minutes and look up, and those clouds are gone, and there are new clouds in the sky. Mental chatter is like that, it's there. Our problem is not that there is mental chatter. Our problem is that we identify with our mental chatter. We become enmeshed with it and engage with it. And when you become enmeshed with it and engage with it, it drags you to all kinds of places you do not want to go. So the first step is to observe your mental chatter. And as you do that, as I said, it loses a great deal of power over you. After you've been doing that for a while, a long while, we're talking not about days or weeks, we're talking about decades, you come to the point where you are firmly rooted as the observer, and then you don't observe your mental chatter anymore, you ignore your mental chatter. Because understand, as long as you're observing the mental chatter, you're still stuck in duality. There is you, there is the mental chatter, and you are observing the mental chatter. But when you start ignoring it, then you find that the mental chatter dissolves. Ramana Maharshi had a beautiful way of explaining this. Let's assume you are laying siege to a fortress and you have sealed off all means of entry and egress. And every time someone in the fortress reveals himself, you shoot him with an arrow. And you keep doing that. Eventually, all the defenders will be killed and the fortress falls. In exactly the same way, if you ignore every thought that comes in, not my business, then the mind dissolves. And when the mind dissolves, you realize that you are the self. Tattvamasi Shvetaketu, that you are. That is your nature.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rao. I think I'll pause for a few seconds, let them absorb this wisdom. Okay. So, so Dr. Rao, if I can check with you in this moment, is there a way that spirituality and coaching can be integrated so that we become an instrument of the universe and whosoever comes our way to understand to work with them, we do?
Repeat your question, Ujjwal. I'm not sure I understood it.
Yeah, I'm saying that is there a way that you see that the spirituality, the spiritual practices can be integrated into coaching?
I think they're already integrated. It's simply a question of how the coach views it
Mhm.
and what the coach communicates to the person being coached.
Yeah.
I don't believe we have a habit of splitting up our life. This is my life. I'm a coach, I'm a father, I'm running a business, and my coaching practice is actually business and I have to grow it. And this is my spiritual life. I'm going to sit down and meditate in the morning and so on. Completely artificial distinction. Don't have that.
Mhm.
In fact, when people say, I meditate every morning because, I'm under tension, I'm under stress, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a meditation practice. I'll meditate half an hour every day, or 1 hour, or 1 hour twice a day, whatever. Not much use. Our mind has developed such a momentum through the years of conditioning we've had that a spiritual practice of meditation is not going to slow it down. The best it can do is slow down the rate of increase. The only way in which you're going to be able to start making any headway in reducing the momentum of this demon which is carrying you astray is if your entire life is a meditation. Let me repeat that. If your entire life is a meditation, so everything that you do is a meditation. There are many things that you do now, and you never think, I am the doer. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you go to the toilet, all of this is happening. You never think, I am doing it. But then you go to work, you're coaching a client. Oh, now I have to do things. Things don't happen by themselves. I have to use my cognitive abilities to decide what I am going to tell my client. This is different. That's fiction. Your life can happen spontaneously. The coaching happens, but you are not doing the coaching. It emerges. Let life unfold. Don't try to make life unfold.
Mhm.
And then you'll realize that your entire life is a spiritual journey. There is no difference between you're sitting and meditating and you're sitting to coach a client. You have to make that transition between your ears first, and then it comes out spontaneously outside.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for clarifying that we are expert in creating duality when it is not a dual thinking that is required. But just one administrative question that I had, and I'm not sure if it is okay to ask you, but if we if we meet with clients who have a very different view about spirituality, because most of them mix up spirituality and religion, so are there any ethical considerations that we need to make while we deal with our clients on this realms?
That is a very good question, Ujjwal. And I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask that because, as far as my own coaching practice is concerned, if somebody is not aligned in that direction, I don't take that person on as a client of mine.
Okay.
So if somebody is not inclined in that direction, let's simply say, hey, it's been wonderful meeting you. Let me recommend some persons who could possibly help you. But if you're not in a position where you have that as an explicit niche, what you can do is constantly ask questions of your client, which will lead the person in that direction.
Mm.
A lot of my coaching is based upon the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, and that is pure Advaita Vedanta. And some people are ready to hear and they want to go in that direction. And I'm very selective. Those are the only people I accept as my clients. But there are many who are not. The important thing for the coach to realize is even if they are not ready today, that is what they are really seeking. But don't go holier than now and say, this is what you're seeking, this is what you want. Gradually, by gentle stages, lead them in that direction. Ramakrishna had a wonderful way of doing it. He says, if you want to lead the cow to the water, it's a great idea to give it handfuls of grass. And as it starts chewing on the handfuls of grass you give it, you lead it gently towards the stream where the water is. So coaches have to learn to perfect that technique, and they can only do it if they have made their own transition first between their ears.
Mm. Yeah.
I always maintain that the only thing you ever do in life is you work on yourself. You have become a coach, you want to help your clients, you do the best job you can, but in the process of doing that, you're working on yourself. And that's the only thing you ever do in life. You work on yourself. You just happen to be given the business of coaching as the tool you're going to use to work on yourself. So never forget that.
Yes. And also, Dr. Rao, I remember one of your teachings is that when you're working with others, you are also actually working on yourself,
Yes,
polishing the mirror.
absolutely. You're always working. That's the only thing you ever do. You work on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is it okay for me to take some questions? We have a bunch of them, but
Oh,
in the
sure.
interest of time, so Ronit is asking that what is the purpose of mental chatter if everything is defined by the universe, arranged by the universe, then why mental chatter is there? What's the purpose?
This is the type of question, Ujjwal, that cannot be answered
Mhm,
because we're all thinking creatures. And I would say probably the majority of people listening to this podcast are left brained individuals who
mhm,
work on who live in their minds.
mhm.
And therefore, anything that comes up is attacked with the mind. I want to understand this. And you're creating a duality. And what I would like to do is, I would like to quote Swami Vivekananda, who was asked a similar question. And he considered it for a moment. And then he said, your question will never be answered. And he said, the reason it will never be answered is because within Maya, there is no answer. And outside of Maya, there is no one left to ask the question. So your question will never be answered.
Wonderful.
That is not a frivolous remark. It's actually a very profound
Yes.
statement. Within Maya, there is no answer. Outside of Maya, there is no one to ask the question.
Yeah. Mm.
So, my typical way of dealing with all of that is the way Ramana Maharshi puts it. Who is the person asking that question? Find that person out, and then you will get your answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for that. Another question from Arun Krishnaswamy says that how do you decide then which desires or urges to pursue and which one to not? So, so he asked, would you then pursue buying tickets for the next Grand Slam?
Say that again.
He said that then would you pursue buying tickets for the next Grand Slam? So basically, how do you decide which desires to pursue and which one to not?
The here is something that I want to get into in this very up. We are always obsessed with what is the right decision. And this flows across our entire life. Should I marry this person or should I marry that person? And there are advantages to marrying this person, there are advantages to marrying that person. What is the right thing for me to do? Should I get this job, accept this job offer, or should I accept that job offer? I remember when I was teaching at London Business School, one of my students almost have a nervous breakdown because she couldn't decide whether she should accept an offer from BCG or from McKinsey. And she really almost had a nervous breakdown. And the point is, you think that you're making the decision, and one of them is right and one of them is wrong. Not so. Whenever in fact, what happened is that one time at London Business School, when I was teaching in business schools, I always used to have a module in my course because students were interested in jobs. So I had a module on get the job hunting process. And one day I invited the director of career placement at London Business School to attend that session. And she came back and said, Professor Rao, that was awesome. Can I persuade you to give this presentation to the entire London Business School community? So I did. And many of the things that I said were contrary to what business school was telling the students. For example, business school say, your first job out of business school is extremely important. So do a lot of work, research the company thoroughly, know what you're getting into, what are your interests. And my advice was, it really doesn't matter. The first job out of business school is very largely meaningless. It's your third or fourth job that really matters. So don't agonize over it. Simply pick the one you dislike the least and go for it. So in exactly the same way, don't agonize over the decision. Go into as calm a frame as you possibly can. Meditate, if you will, and in the quiet stillness, whatever comes to you, go with that one because you cannot make the wrong decision, quote unquote. I repeat that. You cannot make the wrong decision. Years back later, you say, oh, I could have done that. No, your circumstances were such that the lessons you needed to learn come from the decision you made. In a sense, that is what we're talking about when we say surrender. Whatever decision you make is the right decision. You grow into the circumstances that flow from that decision.
Mm.
Do not agonize. So, with regard to, am I going to buy tickets for that? In all likelihood, yet. I have some family situations which are important, as a result of which I'm not going to go to Wimbledon this year, may not go next year, but I may the year after, or I may not. Who knows? Either way is fine.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, and this match is certainly enjoyable for sure. It's like looks like a Grand Slam conversations. But we have one question. I think we have space for a couple of more questions, Dr. Rao. So Tanuj says that Dr. Rao, can one reach a state where one is always in the observer mode? And is being in observer mode very effortful?
Uh, it is possible to get to the stage where you are always an observer. But the purpose of this journey is not to get to the stage where you're the observer. The purpose of the journey, if you will, is to realize that there is no observer separate from the observed. There is only one. The observer and the observed are the same. There is no duality. This is something the cognitive mind simply cannot understand. But eventually it comes to the point where you do not ask questions because what is there to ask? That is why, Ramana Maharshi is an embodiment of Dakshinamurti, and Dakshinamurti taught through silence. Language itself is the barrier.
Hmm.
So being the observer, as I said, is something I start everybody out on CPM because it greatly helps you in the predicament that you're in. But ultimately, the thought that you are observing is itself a manifestation of duality. And there is no more observing because there's no one left to observe.
Yeah,
This is where words start to break down.
yeah, yes. Also, Dr. Rao, there's one question from Senthil. It says that is the concept of surrendering across is it consistent across different wisdom traditions, with the religious, secular, and why surrendering is so hard for us as humans? I think you've answered it in some way already, but if there is anything you would like to add.
Surrender is very hard for us because the ego has been reinforced. And if you look at civilization today, certainly all over the West, but increasingly in India as well, there is we're constantly bombarded with things which reinforce the ego. I have to go out and do it. I can do it. I am talented. I work hard. I have bright ideas. I can do it. It's all a reinforcement of the ego. And the more you have the reinforcement of the ego, the less capable you are of surrender.
Hmm.
But you recognize, no, I did not do anything. Somebody was once complimenting Warren Buffett on his extraordinary success as a stock picker. And Warren
Yeah,
Buffett just looked at it and said, I was lucky. Fat lot of good my skills would have been if I had been born in Afghanistan.
yeah,
Have that attitude.
absolutely.
Don't think about anything that happened in your life as I did it. You were lucky. Be immensely grateful that you were lucky, but don't get caught up into saying, I did it. And this is particularly important for coaches because too many coaches have the notion, I did it, I helped my client, look how successful he or she became as a result of my thing. No, the client did it. If you were instrumental in that, the universe did it, Krishna did it, Jesus did it, whatever. Be grateful that you were an instrument, but you did not do it. You have to think about it constantly, and when you think about it constantly, gradually the sense of doership drops away. And that's when you'll find that you have the greatest success as a coach too.
Yeah. And Dr. Rao, last question, which is, I think I would love to hear that answer one more time because everybody asks you this, that in this, when we go for the surrender, etc., it's like living in mental soap opera all the time. So, what is the ultimate goal of human life or ultimate purpose of human life, according to you?
There is no purpose. We're always saying, what's the purpose? I want to live a meaningful life. I want to discover my purpose. Purpose is not like a seashell on the beach. You're walking along the beach one day and you see that, hey, here's my purpose. Purpose is not something you find. Purpose is something that you create. It is inside you. A lot of people talk to me about, Professor Rao, I want to be passionate about what I do. And they look at me and say, you're very passionate about what you do. I want to be like that. I want to have passion. And the short answer is passion does not reside in what you do. It's not outside. Passion is inside you. And if you don't find it inside yourself, right where you are, you're not going to find it outside. So when you're talking about what is the purpose of life, there is no purpose. The purpose is to be, not to be this or be that, not to be a
Just be.
great coach or not to be a multi-billionaire or not to be prime minister or president, but just be. And you always are that, to recognize your true nature. Aham Brahmasmi. I am. That's it.
Great, Dr. Rao. I think we didn't know where 1 hour flew by, and thank you for all the wisdom. And we also are grateful to all the spiritual masters through whose wisdom flow through you. And on behalf of Coacharya and all our attendees, we pay our deep respect and gratitude to you for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. Wisdom from Dr. Srikumar Rao is really, really worth pursuing time and again. And he will trigger a lot of reflections in you. So thank you for joining today. And International Coaching Week is coming to an end from Coacharya's side, but our offer for, we really wanted to also offer lower fees in case you want to join for our one of the coach training programs over next quarter. So do get in touch with the Coacharya team, support@coacharya.com. And not just celebrations, wisdom, but we also wanted to offer some financial incentives for you because we believe that this world needs coaching and coaches more than ever before, more instruments of the universe in Dr. Rao's language. So thank you so much, Dr. Rao. We really loved having you today.
My pleasure, Ujjwal. Would you be good enough to share the chat, both the recording and the chat box for the session with me?
Absolutely, Dr. Rao. I will instruct our colleague Dens and Yamini here to do that needful. And we'll also mark Jacqueline in the copy so that she also has that.
Wonderful. So I wish everybody here a wonderful rest of your life.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you.
Hi, Ujjwal.
Thank
Please
you.
join me on my other platform. See you.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Bye bye.